Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll get started here in just a couple minutes. All right, hello everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Matthew. I'm the Community Events Manager at Geekdom. I want to thank you for joining us for today's Geekdom online workshop. Today, shortly, we'll be joined by Jocelyn, who will be going over how to make your nonprofit business succeed. So for those who may not be familiar with Geekdom, and for Geekdom members tuning in, Geekdom is currently closed at the moment. All memberships have been paused, but we have been working on a lot of different virtual membership things and also virtual workshops. So I'm excited to join you via Zoom and connect with y'all. So if there's any questions along this workshop for myself or Jocelyn, feel free to put them in the chats. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you're tuning into this later, also will be archived for our members. But thanks again for joining. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to Jocelyn, who'll get things set up. But again, see you guys in the chat.
Hello, everybody. My name's Jocelyn, and I'm very happy to be here with you. Give me just a second here. I'm going to share my screen with you. There we go. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. As Matthew said, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and I will try to answer them as we go along. So today we're going to talk about how to make your nonprofit business succeed. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Jocelyn Fanconi, and I have over 25 years of experience working with small businesses, both for-profits and nonprofits, and I have held every position that you can hold in a nonprofit in both a paid and a volunteer capacity over that time as well. So we're going to talk about your nonprofit business, or if you're trying to start a nonprofit business. If you can let us know in the chat how many of you either have nonprofit businesses or thinking about starting one right now, or even if you're a volunteer, we would appreciate that. Let me go to my next screen here. All right. Okay, so today what we're going to cover is we're going to talk about nonprofit business setup, becoming donor and grant ready, and fundraising techniques you can use now. In the current time that we're in, since everybody's business models have been disrupted. Okay, so my first question for you, and if you can drop this in the chat, that would be great. How many new nonprofits are started each year? I'm curious to know how many you think are started each year, and I'll answer that question for you at the end of this presentation. Right. So nonprofit businesses, to set up, one of the things that you need to do is you have to set up your nonprofit as an actual business entity. A lot of people know that, but they don't actually do it. There are laws, and the state of Texas has them, and many states do, that certain types of nonprofits, you don't really have to set up as a business entity. For instance, a lot of times you'll find your little leagues, your soccer companies like that, or your soccer leagues, different types of groups, or a lot of times revolving around sports and youth, that don't actually set up as a business, but they get the recognition, at least at the state level, that they're a nonprofit entity and they're able to operate that way. But if you want your business to actually succeed, you need to fully set up your business. And there's 3 stages to setting it up. First, you need to incorporate in the state that you're in. So in this case, I'm sitting in Texas, so we'll talk, I'm going to show some examples from Texas. The second step is you have to get your federal tax identification number, or otherwise known as your EIN number. And the third step's actually getting your nonprofit status designation. Okay, so we're going to talk about the nonprofit corporation first. All right. One of the things, story-wise, is that a lot of nonprofits don't ever take this first step, believe it or not. And so sometimes you may be thinking that you're donating to a nonprofit that actually has been recognized, you know, they've got all the right wording, everything, but they haven't. Now, you don't want to be that nonprofit, because there's all kinds of problems with that, including up to people being fined, people going to jail, you name it. You don't want to be that nonprofit. I recently talked with a nonprofit corporation that did the first step here, which was incorporating in the state that they're in, but they have not done the rest of the steps. So it's really important that you do all 3, especially if you want to fundraise and be in compliance with government regulations and tax regulations and all of that. So your very first step is you're going to look for your Secretary of State's office in the Division of Corporations. Now, in the state of Texas, that is known as SOS Direct and Business Services. You'll hear both of those. And if you go out to their nonprofit organization page, it's going to give you several resources, as most states will, on setting up your corporation. Now, I'm going to caveat this with something. There are a lot of companies out there that will help you set this up. And they will charge you lots of money to do it. And they will only set up the legal part for you, and they will set up another portion of it that we're going to talk about in a minute. But what I'm going to encourage you to do is make sure that you always pull the information, in this case here in Texas, from the website, and you read through it first yourself so that you understand what needs to be done. Now, in the state of Texas, and in most states, the minimum requirement is a 3-person board of directors. When you are setting up your nonprofit organization, you actually have to have a board of directors. This is because you are not setting up a sole proprietorship. You are not setting up a limited liability corporation. A nonprofit is a corporation immediately upon filing your articles of formation and like that. So you have to have that. You need somebody who's going to act as the registered agent. Now, there's a lot of companies out there that one of the things that they do is they charge you very cheaply to set this up, and then they charge you a huge fee every year to act as the registered agent. The registered agent, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is the person or the entity, so it can be a third-party entity company, that agrees to accept documentation from the state, or like if you're, God forbid, but if you're sued, they take the service of that suit and like that on your behalf. If you don't feel comfortable or somebody on your board of directors doesn't feel comfortable to do that. However, there's many companies that will do that out there, and they charge about $99 a year to handle that for you. And they also say, hey, it's time to file your reports, but they don't file the reports. You file the reports. Or you can pay a separate fee to file those reports, but it's not huge fees year over year. You're also going to have to fill out an application and articles of formation in order to incorporate in the state. You may also, depending where you are, so if you happen to be tuning in and listening to this right now and you're not in the state of Texas, you may also have to produce the bylaws for the corporation in order to incorporate in the state as well. Each state has different requirements for what it means to incorporate and what it means to set up a nonprofit organization. So for instance, in the state of New York actually requires that the nonprofit have a third-party registered agent. And so, for instance, for some of our clients, we serve that capacity for them. But you're definitely going to have an application, and there's always going to be a fee, guys. I mean, I'd like to tell you that this is free, but even the states want to collect their money. It really ranges everywhere from 25 bucks all the way up to about $300 to file your nonprofit incorporation. In the state of Texas here, nonprofits can incorporate for $25. Plus, it's usually $1 per name search, because you do need to double check your name, and the state charges you $1 for that. All right. The requirements are to get your step number 2 is actually getting your federal tax ID number. Now, you're going to need this ID number for all kinds of stuff. One is to file for your nonprofit designation. 2 is to open the bank accounts that you need for your nonprofit organization. You also might need it as a W-9 or to fill out on W-9 form for funders. You need it to be able to give it to your donors, because they have to report that number on their taxes if they've donated to you. So there's all kinds of reasons why you need this number. You cannot just use somebody's social security number that's on your board. You actually have to obtain a federal tax ID number for the nonprofit corporation. However, you cannot obtain that until after the state issues your certificate of corporation or your certificate of formation, depending on which state. They use both terminologies. Once that's approved, you're going to go out online to www.irs.gov, and from there you will see a button right on the homepage that says, get your EIN. You're going to click that, and you're going to fill everything out online. Now, the IRS calls the form that you're filling out, they call it the SS-4. I encourage you to pull the SS-4 and pre-fill that form out before you start filling it in online. This way, the IRS will issue, once you've got everything filled out, there's no fee to this part. They will immediately issue your tax ID number. You want to write it down in the corner that's situated on the SS-4, and you want to immediately print the letter that they will give to you, because you are going to need that federal tax ID letter for the rest of the time that the business exists. You will need to submit it to funders. You will need to submit it even sometimes to entities like GuideStar and Facebook and like that, to be able to claim that you own the real estate that they're lending you for fundraising and things like that. So you don't want to lose that. That is along with your certificate of formation and incorporation, your articles, your bylaws. Those are really, really important documents that you've got to keep for the life of your agreement. The IRS lets you designate a third-party person to get your EIN. If you choose to do that, you have to name them on the form, and you also have to write up a statement that's between you and that third party that's signed by both of you, agreeing that they can get your federal tax ID number. You must keep that also on record. Now, we're not going to go way in depth because we don't have time, but any questions you have, if you put them in the chat, as I said, I will come back and try to answer those for you. So step number 3, now that you've got steps 1 and 2 done, and this is the one step that almost everybody a lot of times puts off, because we're going to talk about Form 1023 here, and they put this stuff off because it is a lot of work, and for a lot of folks it can be really, really confusing. Okay, so the IRS just recently changed. They actually changed it before we had the shelter-in-place orders, and they changed it to filing both the Form 1023 and the Form 1023-EZ online. So you can go out to the irs.gov site, and then you file everything, both of those forms, through what the government calls pay.gov. So you do have to set up an account on pay.gov, and then you can go file these forms. Now, on the IRS form, they do have, and I'll show you on the next page, I think I put it in here, or on the IRS site, there's on the very front page of the IRS site, up in the top header, you'll see something that says charities and organizations. That is what you want to click on. And from there, you can get all of the instructions and everything for the forms. You can get sample forms so you know what you're looking for. I do have the sample templates and like that. So if you need those, you can email me, and we can, or let Matthew or let us know in the chat, and we can make sure that we can get those sent to you with the instructions. The Form 1023 is the full-blown nonprofit status designation form. Now, keep something in mind. There are 29 different nonprofit statuses. So a lot of times everybody's applying for the C3, which is your charitable status. That's usually what most people are interested in. However, you might be filing for C6 because you have a membership-based organization. You could be like maybe you're a Chamber of Commerce, or you could be filing for a C4. Maybe you're an economic development organization or something along that line. So those are the 3 that most people are most familiar with, but there are designations for veterans organizations. There's designations, there's a couple designations that are only available to governmental entities. There are designations for just about everything you can think of. If you are a church and you're listening to this, you will always file under the C3 status. However, churches do not actually have to formally file for C3 status. There is an exemption in the law for them, but they can, but they also operate as C3s. Now, the Form 1023, as I said, it's the full blown. It's a huge application. There's a lot more detail you have to provide. There's a lot more information you have to provide. And so really, really small nonprofits that are going to make less than $50,000 a year, and that is the cap. So it's got to be less than 50,000, and it's $50,000 a year, and over 3 years worth of projections as well, can file what's known as the 1023 EZ, which is basically almost a postcard size. You're certifying and attesting that you're not going to go beyond those caps, that you have all your documents in place should you be audited. Now, a word of caution here. The IRS can pull at any point once you do the application to audit your application. So we had a client recently who wanted to do the 1023 EZ. So we did the 1023 EZ for them because that's what they wanted to do. And they said, we really believe that we're not going to make more than the financial threshold. Well, the IRS came back and they had questions for this particular entity, and for the mission, and for the program descriptions, and all of this. All the items we would have supplied in the Form 1023. Now, we had made sure that they were set up with everything, and we're going to talk about that in a minute and what all of that looks like. But even though we filed the 1023 EZ and we responded to every IRS question, and my client was able to provide, and we had made sure that they were set up the way that they needed to be, the IRS recently came back and said, we're rejecting the 1023 EZ application. We're going to refund your money, and you must go file the Form 1023. So my recommendation always to everybody is, even if financially you make the decision to file the 1023 EZ right now, you need to make sure that you have everything that the Form 1023 requires in place. All right, so let's talk about this part. And then I'll check for questions, and then we'll go on to the next part here. So step 3, this is where you're actually filing. So these are some of the items that you're gonna need. You do need the approval from state that your nonprofit's actually been incorporated. That is the form of your certificate of incorporation, your certificate of formation, your articles that you had to submit at the time that you were incorporating with the state, and if applicable, depending on the state, your bylaws. You also will need the federal tax ID letter. You have to have a listing of your board of directors, and it's not just a listing of their names. You need the listing of their names, of the position that they're holding, so if they're a board officer or not. Most states only require 2 officers. One is a board chair or board president. The other one is the secretary. Treasurer is not actually a requirement for most states, but you do have to have a minimum of three directors. You also need to have their addresses, and you need to be able to say whether or not they're going to be paid. Now, most 501c3 corporations do not pay their board of directors. However, there is absolutely nothing illegal about paying your board of directors, but there are ways that it should be done so that there's absolutely no conflict of interest. That is a totally different discussion, but in case you are wondering, I will answer that one right now. You also need to have full descriptions of your programs and services. So what are you providing? What is that story? What are you doing with it? Who are you serving? How are you going to serve them? You need to flesh out full descriptions. The IRS will ask for them. If they don't ask for them during the application phase, If they immediately approve your Form 1023-EZ, let's say you filed that one and they don't ask for it, the IRS and anyone else can come audit you at any time. And so you need to be able to produce your program and your services description. When you're filing for your nonprofit status, you have to provide financials for 3 to 5 years. And the difference depends on if you're already operating or you're not operating. So you need to file actual financials. So if you've already been making money and you've already gone through 1 year, you need to provide the actual, and then you project for the next number of years that you have to, or you're providing projected financials. And this would be all of the income revenue that you expect to come in and all of the expenses you expect to have out. You also have to select your type of nonprofit status that you're trying to apply for. Now, the IRS can award a different status depending on how you answer different questions within the application that is applicable to your organization. You must have a conflict of interest policy in place, and you must be able to submit that as well. And then there will be other items that will be applicable to your specific nonprofit business. And those items are determined based on the yes, no answers and directions within the application. So even if you decide to file the Form 1023-EZ, it is to your benefit to go through the full-blown application and answer those questions and make sure that you have everything in place. Articles, bylaws, conflict of interest policy, financial management policies, your program descriptions, full listing of board of directors, everything in place that you could possibly be asked for. All right, and before I check questions here, I'm going to say nonprofit business model key differences. Okay, here's the biggest difference from if you were starting a for-profit business or if you were in the for-profit business, if your nonprofit business is already up and running. You are automatically a corporation from the start. What that means is small nonprofit business founder or founders do not have control of the business. It is the board of directors as a whole that has control of the business. This is probably the biggest thing that causes a lot of the nonprofit business founders that I've worked with over the last 25 years trouble, because they and their immediate startup board, which is usually comprised of friends and family, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, think that only one person has control. And the law says that the board of directors as a whole must run the company, and the board of directors as a whole must manage the company. The board of directors has, as a whole, sets policy for the company and is responsible for ensuring the financial integrity of the company. No one director can make decisions without a vote of the whole, unless in your bylaws, or if you carve something out specific within the articles, you have delegated, and the board as a whole, upon adoption of those things, has delegated that to a specific person or people. And that could be somebody on the board. It could also be the executive director, if you have one, or an operations director, but it has to be specifically designated for the board. Now, it doesn't always have to be done in the bylaws because boards change and you don't always change bylaws. So the board can vote to give somebody a certain amount of authority without having to come back to the board all the time. So just to recap, if you are the founder of your nonprofit, you're not the lone leader. And that is the biggest thing that you may want to change within your operations right now. To act otherwise means that you will put your nonprofit business that you've worked so hard for, and in some cases sacrificed everything for, in jeopardy. And it can cause the least amount of issue that it causes is that you lose your designation. Okay, but that it can be one of the #1 causes of losing your nonprofit status designation. Now, keep in mind, nonprofit status designation means that you don't have to pay the majority of taxes on your income. There are occasions where nonprofit organizations do pay taxes on income. That is not a bad thing, but the vast majority, you won't, as long as it's within your mission and the programs and things that you're doing are within your mission, most of the time you won't pay taxes. But of course, this is a conversation that you really do need to have a CPA. And even if you have somebody, a third party, helping you do the formation of the documents, you do want to run them past an attorney if you're not sure about them, because that is just good business management. You also, if your nonprofit's been going for a while, you more than likely have somebody that you've brought in to run the day, as I call it, the head of staff. They partner directly with the board and then pass everything else down to the staff and volunteers. But as you can see, there's 4 different entities that really help run a nonprofit. And I'm going to see if some way, I don't know. Oh, let me see if I can see the chat here. I don't know if I can. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, Nicole, Rianne. Hopefully I said your name right here. And Brandon, I appreciate you letting us know where you're at. Please let me know if this is helpful so far, this information. And I'm gonna go on from here. Now that I figured out the chat box. Okay. All right. So let's talk about getting your nonprofit ready for grants and donor readiness. And there is such of a thing as getting it ready for grants and donor readiness. A lot of nonprofit organizations skip this step, and especially in the current period that we are in this new economy, which, you know, more than likely there's some things that are going to remain, but it's going to change. You need to make sure to make your nonprofit successful, or the nonprofit that you're volunteering for or that you're starting. You want to make sure that you do not skip this step. Okay. I can't tell you how many nonprofit organizations I've worked with over the years that have skipped this step. I was talking with a nonprofit organization the other day that had called to inquire and get some advice around their organization. And they told me that not only had they not finished getting their 501c3 status, but they couldn't actually apply for grants directly. They were having to apply for them through a third party, partner with a different nonprofit and be a sub to grants that they wanted. And they were having problems attracting donors. So they have a really, really, really good mission. But the problem is that they didn't finish steps 1, 2, and 3. So that is impacting their ability to go after grants. And honestly, it impacts your long-term donor readiness as well. Now, from the time that you incorporate your nonprofit organization, you have 27 months to apply for 501c3 status. Okay. I always recommend that you go ahead and you apply for it as soon as you can. Don't wait that 27 months. If you apply for one or wait after 27 months and try to go apply, the IRS will make you jump through many more hoops to prove that you are not actually a for-profit company that's hiding under the nonprofit tax exempt banner, and you don't want that. So, so with grants and donor readiness, the thing that we want to concentrate on is, do we have everything in a row? So one is your board of directors built out so that you can fully make the business decisions? And by this, what I mean is, when you're looking for people to add to your board, you want to add people that have human resource backgrounds, that have financial backgrounds, that have legal backgrounds if needed, that have backgrounds in whatever type of program that you're trying to run, that maybe represent the constituency that you're going to sell, or not sell, but that you're going to help. You want to make sure that that board of directors is built out right. So our founding boards most of the time are close friends and families a good portion of the time, and they may even have some of these backgrounds that I'm talking about. However, the thing to keep in mind is most of our close friends and families come onto our boards of directors to help us because they believe in us. They don't actually do it because they are committed to the vision, or that they expect to have to make decisions or help do work in the early years, because the first couple of years is the founder and the board most of the time doing a good portion of the work while they're building it up and getting the revenue stable so that they can hire other staff. So even as the founder, if I'm getting paid, I still, eventually I'm going to need more help, because my job at the founding stage is I'm wearing all the hats, I'm doing all the fundraising, I'm doing, all the social media, I'm making sure we got the money in the bank, etc. Right? So at some point, though, your job as the founder needs to go more into what we call the CEO phase, the visioning phase, where you're helping set tone and direction and balancing between the board of directors and staff and all of that, and making the connections with grant funders and with donors, and not just little donors, but major donors, and doing all of that information. So the first thing that you have to start with is getting your board of directors built out right. The second thing that you need to do is you need to get your board of directors trained on how to run a nonprofit organization. There's multiple ways to do that. We're not going to have enough time today to completely go into that, but there's everything from board retreats to one-off trainings to trainings at different stages where you're at, to help them know how to manage this organization and this particular management style that the board as a whole, that you all as a whole will adopt. Okay, the next part is that your board of directors are actually contributing something. Now, not all board members are actually able to financially contribute, so that they are at least volunteering. If you're doing, I realize right now we really can't do in-person events, but say if you're doing an event that they're helping do that and that they're, serving on committees. Grant providers, grant funders in particular, they will ask that question, and they really want to know what percentage of your board is contributing. They want to know the hard dollars and they want to know the volunteers. So you need to make sure that that's ready. Your donors, though, your average, I'm going to say everyday donor may not ask. They may just donate to you. Your kind of mid-tier donors, those are the guys who are giving you a little bit more above maybe what you asked for. Sometimes they're going to ask you, sometimes they're not going to ask you how the organization's run, what does the board look like, who's contributing, what you're programming, all of that. So part of the stuff that you already got ready from the 1023 application, you've already got ready in getting donor and grant ready. Excuse me, I gotta take a drink. Okay. But your major donors are going to, so these are the guys who give you, they like your mission and they're giving you more than what you asked up and above everybody else. They, a lot of times, are really going to want to know that you are running your nonprofit business well, and that you have the fiscal controls in place, that you're not wasting money, that you're not burning through money, that staffed appropriately, etc. If you're running a program that you've never run and you don't have experience, you just have it on your heart to go serve the population that you're trying to serve in that mission, you need to make sure that you get somebody hired in that can run the program that you are created, who actually has the credentials to run the program. This is really key in grant applications and even with your major donors. They want to know that your money's well spent. The other part is donors, or if we look at it, sponsors, because a lot of times sponsorship, but they are a type of people who sponsor, entities that sponsor are a type of donor. They too want to know that if they are giving you funds to run your programs and like this, that you're going to be here 3 months from now. You're not just going to close your door. So it's very, very important to make sure that you get all of your structure, your business structure in place. A word about, well, we'll talk about sponsors next. Okay, so this is my visualization on this slide of how you're getting everything in place. Just like we start any project, I love this because this is going to be a painting project. Somebody's doing artwork here, but they've laid everything out that they need in order to do their project. It's the same thing with grants and with donors. You want to make sure that you have all of your tools in place, your program descriptions, your structure, your mission's very clear, your messaging's very clear. Do you have stories that you can share? And if you're a new startup, talk about stories about why you as the founder really saw this need and how you're solving it. Have your board talk about why they jumped on, how they're solving it. All of these things will help you have a successful nonprofit business. Not only for times like we have right now, where things are, everybody's being affected. Nonprofits are very vulnerable to close. They close just as fast as other regular types of businesses. So the thing to keep in mind is the stronger you can have your foundation and the more that you've put all your tools in place, as I like to call them, you will be able to weather storms. Those organizations that have not put into place everything that they needed, just like other businesses right now, are going to close. So you don't want that to happen. That happens in the best of times and it happens in the worst of times. That's not something you want to do. You want to start out on a very strong structure. So let's talk about the things that you can do and the tools that you can use for fundraising right now. Okay, I see some of you are starting based on your feedback here. So we're going to talk about what you can do as you're getting started and as you are getting your designation. All right, so and for those of you who may watch this later, what you can do, you know, pick up and really concentrate on at this moment in time to keep moving forward. All right, when first you get incorporated, then you get your EIN, then you file your Form 1023 to get your designation. The IRS actually says that when you get, from the moment that you get incorporated with the state, you can start operating as if you have your 501 designation. Now, you want to file your 501 designation application as soon as you can. as I said, you do have up to 24 months, but you can start acting as soon as the state approves your incorporation. You can start acting as if you have that designation. There's a couple little exceptions, but for the most part, it applies to everybody. So what you need to do is put certain language out there that says you're applying for the designation, okay? Because you want to be very, very, very transparent on that. There are donors and funders that will not give to you without the designation. That is the reality of the business. However, a lot of your money is going to come from individual donors during this period of time. But the faster that you apply for your designation, you're going to want to do that, especially if you're a startup. So let's talk about these donors. So what do you do right now with donors? All right. One thing that you can do right now with donors is if you have developed any type of email list, you want to start emailing your donors, but don't, I'm going to say this right now, do not ask them for money. I know that sounds counterintuitive. You're listening to me tell you how to fundraise. This sounds counterintuitive. I'm going to tell you that from my more than 25 years of experience raising funds and over 21 years of writing grants, and I've raised about $30 million, and very rarely have I had to ask people for money. You want to use story and emotion, and evoking emotion is what gets people to donate. Also, right now, the vast majority of your support right now is going to come from individual donors. It's not going to be from corporations. It's not going to be from grant funders. Both of those are the slower road. It doesn't mean that you don't work those into your plan. It just means that right now, go back. If you're already up and running, go back to the basics. If you're just starting, you're going to go to the basics, which means that you're going to use story to talk about what's your mission, why you, you're trying to serve this population. If you have some folks that maybe you've already helped, that they're willing to talk about their story. And not only video these days, guys, but you can then turn that into an email, you can turn it into social media posts, etc. But you, at this point in time, all business has changed. Every business. It doesn't matter what type of business you're running, and it really does not matter what your tax status is. Every business now must have some type of online presence. In the case of a nonprofit, you definitely want to make sure that you have a Facebook business page, that you have an Instagram page, that you have a Twitter account, that you have a LinkedIn business page. And yes, LinkedIn, you will find a lot of donors on LinkedIn. Now, I know TikTok is the new craze, and some people are saying it's good for business, some are not. I'm only going to encourage the 4 base social media platforms that everybody keeps using, whether they like them or not, at this point in time, because you want to keep it to where you can manage it. You want to have presence on all of those, and you want to just cross populate your post amongst them. We're not talking about doing a ton of content, but you need to bring awareness to your organization. You need to get out of what Grant Cardone actually calls obscurity. Nobody knows you except your immediate sphere of influence. And the goal on raising money is to be able to get others interested in it. Right now, your best bet is actually to start going regularly on social media at least once a day and talking about something. You can talk about why you founded it, if you're the founder. If you're an existing nonprofit, like some that we work with, the founder does things. In this particular case, we have sailors that are involved because we have a yacht sailing around the world. So while they can't sail around the world right now, they're doing, a lot of our sailors are doing classes not only on how they work out when they're on the yacht in the middle of the ocean, and it's a racing yacht, guys. So it's not a big yacht, and it has a history. So that's why. But they're teaching how to tie knots. Some of them are actually reading books to children. Some are doing cooking classes with stuff that you can find in your pantry, because a lot of times, the pantry's running dry on the boat. So it's, there's all kinds of different things that you can do like that. The other thing is put in a very, very simple campaign. It's what we call a monthly giving campaign. Ask people to contribute $3. That's it. And ask them to consider a gift of $3 per month. And create a landing page through which they can donate. Now, there's a couple of different donation platforms out there that you can use that are very low cost or no cost. Keep in mind, even if you're starting your nonprofit or you've got it up and running, you still have real business costs. And for a nonprofit organization, one of those business costs is called a donor management platform. So you need to put that in place. So you've got a place for your folks to go donate to you, and you can put that link and that connection everywhere, in your emails, in your on your social media links, all of that. Okay. Now, the next thing that I'm going to recommend in this organization, and this is something that most nonprofit organizations actually don't do, and it's what's known as earned revenue. Now, most of your CPAs and attorneys will try to talk you out of this one, because they will tell you that you will lose your nonprofit designation. That is not true. The IRS regulations say that as long as no more than 50% of your income comes from earned revenue, you can keep your nonprofit designation. So in other words, and if your earned revenue is something that you do within your mission, and it's definitely mission related, you will not actually have to pay taxes on that earned revenue. However, there are certain types of earned revenue that you may have to pay taxes on. So for instance, if you are a cat rescue and you decide to sell t-shirts as opposed to cat collars, you may pay taxes on selling those t-shirts, but you won't pay taxes on selling collars, for instance, okay, in all likelihood. Now, having said this, one thing that I want to encourage you to look at as you're setting up your business, as you're getting started, or if you're already set up, is take a look at what are you doing as part of your mission that maybe you can actually monetize in this situation to help bring in more stability to your organization and continue your mission, or to create the stability in your organization and carry out the mission that has caused you to form your nonprofit organization. For everybody, it's going to look different. And sometimes it does take an exercise. This is where we talked about training. This is where you come in, you train the board a little bit more about this, brainstorm with them, that type of information. But for instance, let me give you an example. Substance abuse treatment facilities, the for-profit ones exist and nonprofit ones exist. The nonprofit one might have, say, outpatient treatment available. And normally they just use fundraising techniques to pay for that. But they may go ahead and start accepting private pay insurance. and they may start accepting private pay clients, what's called private pay in the healthcare industry. That's not coming from other sources like Medicaid or from grant funders or like that. And so they've got this whole new population that they actually have different revenue streams coming in. They're not fundraising here. They're actually using regular revenue structure like any for-profit business would do. Now, because I believe that nonprofits are businesses and they have to be run like businesses, earned revenue needs to be part of your strategy. And right now, if you can do anything to earn revenue, you need to incorporate that within your strategy to make long-term success. Not only get yourself off the ground, but have long-term success. But remember, you don't ever want to go over that 50%. So you need to watch it. There are certain things that you might have to pay taxes on, such as if people buy tickets to your fundraising event, those items can be taxable. So it's nonprofits do actually pay some form of income tax from time to time, not always, but there are definite things everybody does, like with events, that you can. But you know, right now, if you've got a really strong following and you can sell t-shirts and you know that people will basically give you $10 if you can send them a t-shirt and you're able to produce that enough, use that to help stabilize your system, but also use it as a long-term strategy. As I tell my clients all the time, what would you rather do? Have $100,000 from funders and government and everything that's got a ton of strings attached, but you don't have to pay taxes on it, but they tell you how you can spend it? Or have $100,000 that you just paid $25,000 worth of taxes, but you got $75,000 that you can use and spend any way that you want to keep the lights on and pay the staff and invest in other and create other programs and things like that. So that's the question you have to ask yourself. Now, right now, we don't have events, or at least we don't have in-person events, but we do have events like this. I've had some of our clients get very inventive through this period of time on how they're going to do events. So some, for instance, have gone ahead and taken what would have been their fundraising event and brought it online and spread it out over a couple of days. And they're doing lives and they're, you know, showing the story. And so they literally took what might have been a big giant gala, and now they're bringing it online and doing it in smaller groups, utilizing Zoom or other technology. Some have gone to sending out email and using that type of format to raise money and saying, you know, we're going to have the event. So in other words, we decide we're just going to bring everything online, and instead of you getting all dressed up and everything, you know, how about, you know, you consider making the donation for what you would have paid for a ticket or whatever as a straight donation. You've got things like I'm trying to think. I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, guys. On events, you've got kind of like what we're doing here with this training, where you can literally think of it as an event that you're interviewing other people with, say, using Zoom or whatever, and then putting that out there. Now, one of the things that we didn't talk about, but if you don't have a YouTube channel for your event, I mean, not your event, but for your organization, you need to set that up as well, because you want to be able to house your videos there. Now, we're not going to talk a lot about sponsors. I'm just going to say one word. Right now, most companies are not sponsoring. Well, I'm saying more than one word. But anyways, right now, most companies are not sponsoring. We're not going to go into sponsorship right now. Developing sponsorship is a whole different thing, but here's the biggest piece that you need to keep in mind. Companies do not sponsor you because they like your mission. Every once in a while, somebody will sponsor you because they like your mission. They do not sponsor you because they like your mission. We, as businesses, sponsor our nonprofit business counterparts because we want to be able to market. That's the whole reason we sponsor. And the last strategy will be grants, but that's not something to pursue right now unless you are grant ready. And actually, I'm at the end here, so if there's any separate questions, please let us know in the chat. Otherwise, Matthew's going to close it out. Here's how you contact us. You can call us at 210-504-6143 or email Ann with an E at vanconi.com. Thank you. And let me stop sharing this so Matthew can come back in. There we go.
Great. And thank Jocelyn. Thank you, Jocelyn, for the time today. That concludes our workshop. Again, you saw our contact information, and I'll share it in the chat as well. But we thank you for your time, and thank you for everybody that's tuning in. Jocelyn, thanks again for doing this.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I had fun, and anybody wants to connect with me directly if there's specific questions you think of after this, get a hold of me or get a hold of Matthew, and we'll get connected.
Absolutely, sounds good. And also, I'll add, if anybody's interested in learning about more of what we're doing at Geekdom, or like she said, getting in contact with her or any of our other speakers in the community, feel free to email me at matthew@geekdom.com. And also head to our website, geekdom.com/events, for all our future online workshops. We're doing trying a lot more virtual things here in this world. So stay tuned on our Facebook page and our social media to see more of that. Thanks again for tuning in. See you soon.